Often, we need to determine when it is appropriate to use a citation and when it's appropriate to say this is our own information, we're going to provide it to the reader. There are 4 major reasons to cite. Perhaps the best known is to avoid plagiarism. If I'm taking information or data from another source and I didn't create it, I should be citing that source. We're not going to get into it in this video, but there's also a type of citation that is needed to avoid something called self-plagiarism. If, for example, I did a large number of experiments 10 years ago, and I'm writing a report now that references those experiments, I should always cite myself. That way, I'm not accidentally giving the impression that, for example, these experiments were done just recently. The next reason we might want to cite is to shorten a document and avoid unnecessary duplication of effort. In many large organizations, we have a large library of information that's been written over the years. Every single document cannot possibly summarize every single other document. So if the reader needs to see something in another document, simply cite that document and say, go and look there. The next reason is to provide background that doesn't quite fit within the current document. We always want to make sure that we understand what our reader knows and doesn't know. But sometimes we might be up against a reader who simply doesn't have the required background information to understand the document. This is extremely common if you're writing for management who may not be trained technically but have other skills. In order to get around the problem of having to increase the length of your document by a large number of pages by including a number of background pieces of information, you can find a good source or set of sources and direct the reader to them. If the reader doesn't understand something, then they can go and find those sources, read through them, understand them, and come back. Finally, we also want to cite to justify claims by appealing to an authoritative source. If I make a claim in the middle of a document, and I feel as though it might be taken as an opinion rather than a fact, I want to find a good source and direct the reader there. What it says is, this is not only my idea. Someone else thought about this. Someone else did a bunch of maybe experiments or a large number of analyses. And I want to make sure that the reader understands that I'm not just making this up. I'm going to show you a very short document now, and it'll demonstrate each of these individual pieces of citation. So this is a document that I wrote regarding the MTE 100 learning objectives. I've organized it to have only about 1 page, and there are 3 sections. The first is an introduction. The introduction talks a lot about MTE 100, the course itself. It begins by saying that MTE 100 is a first-year concepts course and describes what the course is about. I don't need to cite this, because either it's public knowledge or I'm the one instructing the course, and therefore I don't really need to cite myself in this particular context. What I do need to cite is something where I'm explaining the organization of the course, because I didn't come up with that. The course does in fact come in 2 main parts: design, communications, and professionalism, as well as engineering, graphics, and design. I didn't design the course like this, and therefore this is not information that comes from me. So I include a citation, and this is not my own information, so I'm citing it to avoid plagiarism. Now, this document was designed to be very short. Therefore, I can't possibly provide as much information about the layout of the course, who teaches it, what all of the topics are. So what I'm going to do is direct the reader to another document, in this case the course syllabus, and say, for detailed description of the course, see, and then I give a citation number 1, which is the course syllabus. This allows me to avoid basically copying and pasting the syllabus into this document, making an initial 5 pages long that I don't need to do. The document is all about the learning objectives of MTE 100. Now again, I didn't come up with these learning objectives, and as a result, I cite where I got them. It's actually a direct quote, and since I'm quoting quite a bit, I put it in a centered box here. That indicates to the reader that we're looking at something that comes from a different document. You might have a different format, and that's okay. Now, the reason this document exists is because we want to talk about student engagement, which is the 3rd section. However, I can't guarantee that my reader understands a lot about student engagement. I don't want to add all of that information here, because many books and courses and everything else have been written regarding student engagement. I can't possibly provide that amount of background information, and I have to make some assumptions that my reader understands it. So what I'm going to do is introduce the idea of student engagement, and then say the interested reader is referred to a particular citation. This is a book, and I'll show you the citations at the end. And the reader should, if they don't understand what even the terms mean, go to read the book, and then come back to my document. Finally, I'm going to make a claim. It has been shown that student engagement is enhanced when students believe what they are learning is relevant to their future careers. Although that might sound obvious, that people enjoy learning what they think is relevant, it is still a claim that I need to justify. Rather than trying to justify it myself, which might include running surveys or experiments and a number of additional pieces of work that I would have to do, I can find a good source that has this claim in it and refer the reader to that. Therefore, by using source number 3, I just say, well, this citation justifies my claim. Determining whether a source is authoritative or not requires expertise and is a topic of a significant amount of discussion, so I can't go into it in this video. Finally, once I have all my citations, as always, I need my references page. For those of you who are curious, you can see all 3 of my references, and then you can go and seek them out. So to recap, why we use citations, there are 4 major reasons. First, to avoid plagiarism. Second, to shorten a document and to avoid unnecessary duplication of effort. Third, to provide background information that doesn't fit within the current document. And fourth, to justify claims by appealing to an authoritative source.